It's called The Trajectory of Justice in America, and 8 cases that changed the U.S. And those 8 cases, again, are going to be Watergate burglary, 3 Mile Island, which was a nuclear reactor breakdown in
Pennsylvania. 1979.
79, I remember it very well. And they were dumping radioactive material.
They were getting ready to. They'd been authorized by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to vet all of the radioactive waste materials that had spilled into the containment water out into the Susquehanna River. And we moved in and stopped them at a federal court order prohibiting that and ordered them to clean up the facility and take it away.
See, what's going to be fabulous is you're going to be able to tell the whole backstory on how you got alerted to this terrible about to happen actions. Pentagon Papers.
Yep.
The Pentagon Papers leads to... Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it had started with we were doing the case to protect the right of journalists to protect their confidential news sources for this NBC television cameraman from New Bedford, Massachusetts. We were up in front of the United States Supreme Court briefing that when the New York Times was given a copy of the 47 volumes of the top secret classified study that had been done by the Pentagon analyzing how the Vietnam War had been prosecuted. And Dan Ellsberg had secured a copy of these he was at the Rand Institute down in Los Angeles. And he turned it over to Neil Sheehan, one of the reporters for the New York Times. And I was contacted when their law firm threatened to turn them into the FBI, the New York Times law firm. So they decided that we were arguing much more aggressively on behalf of rights of newspapers. In the other case, they came to us and asked us whether we would represent them, and we did. And they started publishing the content of the papers on the front page of the New York Times on June 13th of 1971. And we did the defense of them when the U.S. Attorney's Office under Richard Nixon and John Mitchell moved to get an injunction to stop them. And we fought them off over a course of 13 days all the way to the United States Supreme Court and won that case. And that is viewed by many historians as one of the major body blows to the administration in the Vietnam War. And it was shortly thereafter that Nixon and the people started having to withdraw troops from Vietnam to stop that war.
And I can't help but think the connection to WikiLeaks and what is happening, and I'm sure you will be talking about that in your class as well. Yep. Cal 126, the Greensboro Massacre.
That was a case in 1979 when a group of doctors from New York went down to Greensboro, North Carolina, and were organizing a union in the textile plants to educate the workers as to the dangers of brown lung disease that is contracted by workers in the textile plants from the cotton dust in the air. And they started organizing a union and were recruiting both black and white workers together into the union on an equal basis. And the Ku Klux Klan began to demonstrate and picket their plant. And so these young doctors organized an anti-Klan demonstration to re-demonstrate back against them. And the Klan and the American Nazi Party gunned them down on national television for doing that. And the Klan and Nazis were acquitted by an all-white jury. And we went in and prosecuted the federal civil rights case against them and convicted them all, including the police department of Greensboro, North Carolina, for aiding and abetting them, and pulling back their police and allowing this killing to take place.
Unbelievable. The Iran-Contra.
The Iran-Contra case is the big one.
You got a fun backstory on that one. How you heard about that?
Well, we were doing the American Sanctuary Movement trial down in Brownsville, Texas,
which involves the Salvadorian.
That's right. The people from El Salvador and Guatemala were attempting to flee from those countries because they'd been targeted by death squads of the right-wing fascist governments that were there and were supported by the Reagan-Bush administration. And so people were fleeing from them as targets of these death squads and coming to the United States, and the Reagan-Bush administration was having them arrested and deported back to the country of their origin, where they were being disappeared and murdered by the governments down there. So we moved in to defend the American church that had set up an underground railroad to help people escape from El Salvador and Guatemala and come to the United States, very similar to the old Underground Railroad that was created by the abolitionists in the United States back
during the Civil War.
During this, well,
prior to.
And so this underground movement was established, Underground Railroad, and they were being arrested by the Reagan-Bush administration, these nuns and priests and activist ministers and rabbis and stuff. So we ended up going in to do the first major criminal defense of them and got it declared unconstitutional to arrest these people for doing this in light of the fact that the Reagan administration had issued orders not to allow these people to apply for political asylum, which they were authorized under our laws to do. And during the course of that case, we were approached by the Methodist bishop in Texas, who had been contacted by one of his congregation, who turned out to be the special agent in charge of the FBI in Greensboro, or in Brownsville, and was lied to by that FBI agent and told that he should have nothing, that they should not allow the church, the Methodist church, to have anything to do with the American Sanctuary Movement because we were allegedly smuggling known communist terrorists into the United States who were allegedly going to be attacking police departments and poisoning reservoirs if the Reagan-Bush administration found it necessary to send U.S. military forces into El Salvador or Guatemala to try to prop up those fascist governments. And when the bishop told us about this, we investigated that and found out that it was just a total lie, but it was a rumor that was being spread by Reagan's head of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, Louis Giuffreda, because he wanted to be given authority to round up all these undocumented Central American aliens and place them in military stockades in the United States without any probable cause to believe they committed any crime other than being here in the United States, and give them no trials and incarcerate them with no right to counsel, etc. It was the predecessor to what is the Guantanamo Bay now. And these right-wing reactionaries have always had that kind of agenda going. And he, also Louis Giuffreda, wanted to arrest Americans. There was a list of American citizens that was kept by them, by the Reagan administration, of American citizens whom they thought might pose a challenge to the government if they declared a state of national emergency. And so they had a list of these American citizens, and Louis Giuffreda wanted to practice rounding them up as well. And so we found out about this, and we discovered that the reason they were doing it is because they were actually planning an airlift of the 82nd Airborne out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina, under a code name called Operation Night Train, and that they were engaging in rehearsals for this, and they were recruiting private citizens in these right-wing militia groups called these Soldiers of Fortune to help round up these undocumented Central American aliens, and they were smuggling military equipment to them from the Pentagon. And these right-wing elements were, with the permission of the Reagan and Bush administration, were smuggling some of those weapons to the Contras down in Nicaragua that had been the National Guard forces for Anastasio Somoza, who is the dictator in Nicaragua, that had been overthrown by the people down there. And these National Guard forces, these fascist forces, had gone into Uruguay, and they were organizing to try to overthrow the new Sandinista government. And the Congress of the United States had passed a law prohibiting the Reagan-Bush administration from giving them any military assistance at all. And so what they were doing is they were covertly designing a system whereby they could hold a military readiness exercise in the United States and work out a channel through which they could smuggle these weapons to them illegally. And so we found out about it through the investigation of that rumor. And we stumbled right across this, and we filed a major federal lawsuit that first publicly revealed the existence of this off-the-shelf enterprise of Oliver North and Richard Secord and Albert Hakim and these others. So we brought on the Federal Racketeering Act lawsuit, and were responsible for getting the special prosecutor appointed, Lawrence Walsh, which generated all the Iran-Contra hearings. and ended up getting a number of people indicted from the Reagan-Bush administration, which Bush pardoned, very similar to what Gerald Ford did. So we've had a record of getting people criminally indicted and having presidents have to pardon them, and then lost the election, both of them, because of that. The Gerald Ford lost the election largely because of his pardoning Nixon, and the George Bush Sr. ended up losing the election for his second term, primarily because he pardoned these guys.
Ah, Danny Sheehan, I wish we had another 2 hours, because we've got so much we could talk about. The art of activism, I like to say, justice activism, and how much more important that is today as it's ever been.
That's right.
In the United States. And
we'll be discussing in the class as well this new recently enacted National Defense Authorization Act, which Obama has signed into law at 11:55 p.m. on New Year's Eve of this last year. And this, for the first time, authorizes the arrest of American citizens in their permanent detention without the right to trial, without the right to counsel, without the right of habeas corpus. And for the first time in American history, this now has been authorized by the Obama administration. And we're going to talk to the students about this and what can be done about this. So this is going to be an extremely interesting, exciting class. And not only communicating information about past cases, but telling people what's going on now that they need to organize to stop.
That's Cal 126, The Trajectory of Justice in America, 8 Cases That Changed the U.S. If you missed any part of the show, you're in luck, because it's going to all be on Artist on Art, and you could hear everything that Danny Sheehan has been talking about in his amazing career of being a constitutional attorney for the people here at the U.S. I also want to mention that your good friend Paul Lee will also be giving a class at Cal 99, where he'll be talking about the rise of the conscious mind in pre-Socratic and Socratic philosophy. And I'm hoping both of you can come on next week and talk about the art of activism. As you were saying, Paul lays the foundation, and then you lead them astray.
That's right. You remember that he'll talk about Socrates, who was actually executed by the city fathers of Greece because of his allegedly subverting American youth by causing them to challenge the leaders of their city-state. And that's going to be a precursor to the course that we're teaching at Cal 126 on Tuesday and Thursday evenings at 6 o'clock.
But no hemlock for you.
No hemlock for us. No.
Oh, thank you so much, Danny. Thank you for everything, and especially for coming on Artist on Art today.
You're more than welcome.
Today is March 26, 2012. Please stay tuned for Gamers on Game. I'm hoping to speak with Emily Martinez.